Welcome to Books on Point. As a young boy, Garth Japhet found his life radically shaped by the Jungle Doctor series of books. Having struggled with anxiety most of his life, he was catapulted into a deep depression. Garth stumbled upon the healing power of story, fictional, factual, and his own. This question set him on the journey described in the book Like Water is for Fish, a journey that led Garth to co-found Soul City and Heartlines. The Soul City and Soul Buddyz series are memorable for the way in which they integrated health topics into compelling storylines on TV, radio, and in print, creating stories so popular that they entertained and informed millions of people. Let's take a look back at a snippet of the first Soul City episode.
Soul City. Masakane is a Zulu word meaning we build together. The staff of the Masakane Clinic and the people of Soul City join hands to confront the real issues facing impoverished, overcrowded communities. Soul City is the backdrop for an unusual love story.
I'd like you to marry me, Lerato.
I mean that when Lerato comes back from wherever she's gone, I'm going to pop the question. Ask her to marry me.
Oh, Ian. What am I going to do?
Laughter.
Garth, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be with you.
So, I mean, we played that particular clip for a reason, and I'm going to get right into it. You know, when you go to chapter 8, and I think it's titled Busker with a Vision, you're sitting on a pavement in Melville having what is probably your third and fourth beer. You've just gotten feedback that your column is doing really well, and now you're thinking about ways to transform it from a column to radio and television. When you look at that clip, or when you hear it, and looking back at the first Soul City episode, I mean, what runs through your mind?
Sure, that's a real throwback to the past. I think, none of us could really believe it. There's one thing to have a dream and another one to see it actually happen. And for that, I'm just grateful to lots of different people along, as I describe in the book, along the way. But yeah, that's an amazing memory for me.
So, I mean, I mentioned in my intro as well that you loved the Jungle Doctor series, mostly because, it spoke to a life of significance and purpose, temporarily replacing your constant feeling of failure. How have you managed to work through that, that feeling of failure, or is it for you a constant working progress?
Yeah, I think we're all work in progress. I certainly am, but it was. I think the sort of key thing was I was able to really, just accept myself and in some ways forgive myself and recognize some of the path that I've traveled, and I'm hoping that through this book I'll encourage others who sometimes see their life at a dead end or a failure. That often, our failures are the beginning of other things. And as I describe in the book, I was once given this analogy of, life being a little bit like a misty road, and you can't necessarily always see the next cat's eye, those little things in the road that allow you to see the road at night. And that's what it's been like for me. And the nice thing about getting a little bit older is that I've been able to look backwards and see that unfold. So sometimes the misty patches now are a little less frightening than they were when I was younger.
Take me through the rationale of putting the book in the manner that you did, where you go back into your past, you relive your story, yet at the same time, as each chapter begins, you interview people you've met along the way to find out about their relationships with their own personal stories.
Yeah, well, the book has sort of got three aims to it. One is around the power of actually getting to understand your own story and spending the time to do that sometimes. And I think that was a gift that I was given in my mid-20s to try and spend a bit of time to do that. And the other is the power to actually get to know other people's stories and what a gift it is to them when you ask and then truly listen. And the third was around the power of story, about how, you know, it's the only thing that has changed the world. All the major religions are based on story. And when I say, let me tell you a story, it's a natural reaction to sort of sit up and listen. And I just wanted to get other voices, not just my own voice, but a range of people, some of whom are well known and some of whom are not. You know, everybody from Tina Shlope, Lillian Dube, David Dennis, but then a range of people who people don't know, everyday people who've found one of those three things or all three of them in their own lives. So that was the point of sort of bringing in other stories into this story.
The Soul City series, including Soul Buddyz as well, which I watched when I was a kid, had a phenomenal impact on most people. Talk to me about some of the work that you're currently doing now as, you know, the CEO of Heartlines. Are you still working in those engaging stories to, you know, have a positive impact on people?
Absolutely. You know, that's been central to the work I've been involved with now for 25, 30 years. So at the core of Heartlines is telling stories. So some people will be familiar with some of our work, Hopeville, which we did some years back, and Nothing for Mahala, and more recently a film that is going to be on the SABC in the next, hopefully in the next month, called Beyond the River. And all of these pieces of work are the basis for interventions into communities in the same way that Soul City and Soul Buddyz were. The difference is that we take on broader issues. So, for instance, Beyond the River is around two guys doing the Duzi Canoe Marathon. One is a young black guy from Soweto, and the other is a middle-class white guy and middle-aged from the suburbs. And it's really not about canoeing. It's about how actually, before they can work together, they need to actually take away their prejudice and really listen to each other's stories. And that's the basis for a whole thing that we've been doing for a while now called What's Your Story, which is when I really listen to you, when I ask you your story, you become human to me no matter who you are. I love the Zulu phrase, Sawubona, I see you. And that is really what that story is really about, is to help people to really reach out and see each other.
Before I let you go, Garth, stories are constantly continuing. We're creating stories right now as we speak. Like Water is for Fish is your first book. Should we be anticipating a second book from you?
Well, if I have you know, I don't think you should speak to anybody when they've just published their first book, because you know, there's just a huge sigh of relief, and I have no idea what people, hopefully, my prayer is that it will, you know, comfort some people, inspire others, but I'm not in a hurry to do another one, and we'll just see where this goes. But it really, as I say, it's not about reaching huge numbers of people, but it's really hoping and praying that people will be inspired by this, to look at their own lives, to reach out to others, to speak to their parents, and that will make a difference. And it's part of my work as a doctor.
All right, Dr. Garth Japhet, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. That's it from me. I'll be back next week with The Alternative Investor. More news with my colleague Nompumelelo Siziba at the top of the hour. Goodbye.